Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. CARICOM leaders meet in Port of Spain to discuss crime in the region. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Tuesday, 18th April 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. CARICOM leaders are meeting in Port of Spain from Monday to discuss violence as a public health issue. The two-day regional crime symposium is being hosted by the government of Trinidad and Tobago at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Port of Spain. During the symposium, each CARICOM nation will share their experiences with crime, while health experts share some solutions. Mahalia Joseph Wharton of TTT News reports.
The decision to treat crime as a public health issue was taken in February 2020 during the 31st intersessional meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM. It was revealed by Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago Dr. Keith Rowley while speaking to the media in Barbados.
What we have taken on this meeting, culminating on discussions of the last meeting, is the whole question of treating violent behavior and crime as a public health issue. And we have agreed that there will be a response along that line.
At that time, Dr. Rowley said there will be initiatives going forward from the preventative and proactive side. During the symposium, Executive Director of the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARFA, Dr. Joy St. John's presentation will focus on crime and violence, a public health approach. And when it comes to matters of mental health and crime, Director of Mental Health at the Ministry of Health in Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Hazel Othello, will begin the discussions on that aspect. CARICOM leaders like Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philip J. Pierre, and Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, are all expected to address the symposium. The private sector will have a voice at the symposium as the perspectives of the private sector from Director of the CARICOM Private Sector Organization, Andrew Sabga, and President of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Charles Pashley, will be shared. Perspectives on community approaches, judicial, education and youth, religious, economics, transnational organized crime, and the social perspective on crime and violence will also be addressed. Mahalia Joseph Wharton, TTT News.
More Barbadian police officers deployed to St. Lucia to help with the upsurge of crime there. More in this CBC News item.
Following an upsurge in gang and gun-related crimes, St. Lucia's Prime Minister, Philip J. Pierre, turned to the regional security system for help. Within days, Barbados was among several RSS member states to answer the call, deploying approximately 10 officers from the Barbados Police Service. Acting Chief of Staff of the Barbados Defense Force, Commander Mark Peterson, tells CBC News another contingent, this time of soldiers, has since been deployed.
The second cohort deployed to St. Lucia last Saturday. In that contingent were 10 members of the Barbados Defense Force. They deployed specifically on the 8th of April this year. So the purpose of the deployment, as you are aware, is to curb the gang violence, to reduce criminal activity within the area, and attempt to arrest the criminal element operating within the south of St. Lucia, primarily the Vieux Fort area.
On arrival, local police officers and soldiers were sworn in as special constables by Commissioner of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, Crusita Descartes Pelias, and immediately went to work beefing up the country's law enforcement efforts. Commander Peterson says there have already been some successes.
They would have essentially conducted patrols on a 24-hour basis. The emphasis was the View Fort area. They would have conducted vehicle checkpoints, personal checkpoints, conducted warrants, etc. within the area of operation. As a result of that, they would have netted some known criminals. They would have seized ammunition, firearms, and to date, I'm advised that 7 persons were arrested. And this is specifically with the involvement of the Barbados Police Service and the Barbados Defence Force.
While the original request was for a 3-week deployment, the acting BDF Chief of Staff is uncertain if the RSS will ask for an extension. He also stressed that the overseas assignment of the officers does not compromise local policing.
As a member of the regional security system, we have an obligation to assist our regional counterparts in times of trial and tribulation. I can assure you that the deployment of these personnel in no way, form, or fashion has undermined the local efforts. We still have adequate personnel to service the needs of the Barbados Police Service. So we have personnel still deployed on the various operations in and around the communities in Barbados.
The High Command of the BDF hopes the operation will be a success, so the region can return to some semblance of normalcy and continue to be considered a zone of peace. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
In the meantime, 3 bandits accused of being part of a violent home invasion in Aranguez over the Easter weekend in Trinidad have been charged by police. One of them, believe it or not, is a 14-year-old. TV6's Alicia Boucher has more in this report.
A 14-year-old boy is one of 3 people who are now charged in connection with the Aranguez home invasion that occurred on the night of April 9th. According to police, the 3 accused have been slapped with several offenses relating to the crime. It is said to have followed extensive inquiries that were conducted by officers of the Barataria Criminal Investigations Department under the supervision of Senior Superintendent Edwards, ASP Calendar, and Inspector Barrett. The accused are Sandal Neptune, age 27, from Caratrace, Laventil, Trevor Barton, age 19, from Nelson Street in Port of Spain, and a 14-year-old boy who is from Block 22 in Laventil. They have each been charged with 3 counts of robbery with violence, 2 counts of assault with intent to rob, false imprisonment, and possession of a firearm and ammunition. The 3 accused were intercepted by police after the robbery as they attempted to flee the scene. 1 bandit was also shot dead by police. On Monday, April 10th, mere hours after the incident occurred, the victims spoke to the media. They recalled how 2 occupants of the home had been badly beaten and guns were held to the heads of 2 other occupants as the bandits attempted to rob them of cash and jewelry. They relayed that a gun that had jammed while the assailants were in their home had only fired as the bandits exited their property. They credited a neighborhood watch group for getting response from the police and for the capture of the men. Police have since confirmed that home invasions are on the rise and they are calling on citizens to be more vigilant. Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
And still on some crime news, no easy task for Police Commissioner Erla Christopher on tackling the crime situation in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This from the former top cop, Stephen Williams, at a church service at Boku Moravian Church.
That task will get harder once we do not support and play our part. You see, we are talking people. We generally say what should be done and what should not be done, but are we willing to do? And once we consider doing the small contributions from each one of us as citizens in this country can in fact make a significant difference.
Former Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams joined with his fellow batch of 79ers in Tobago celebrating their 44th anniversary. His advice to parents and citizens: the police cannot do it alone.
People generally focus on the police service and fail to focus on themselves. It will take all of us to make a difference, and I would just encourage parents to look after their children, the community to look after the young ones in the community, and for all of us to recognize if we play our part, Trinidad and Tobago can be a better place.
Mr. Williams said citizens must play a greater role in the reduction of crime.
If every single citizen play a part, we shall, in fact, I would say over time, achieve our goal of making Trinidad and Tobago better.
Under the tenure of former Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams, the crime rate continued to increase. There was also in 2018 an online petition to have Williams removed from his role. Eventually, the government did not renew his contract. Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
Jamaica's Constitution Reform Committee has reached consensus on severing ties with the constitutional monarchy. TVJ's Kalisha Williams filed this report.
The committee has arrived at consensus for recommendation the abolition of the constitutional monarchy.
So should the country agree to a referendum that Jamaica should become a republic state, this is what will happen.
Once we have abolished the monarchy from our makeup, the makeup of our form of government, it will be replaced by the office of President of the Republic of Jamaica. The President of the Republic of Jamaica will be the formal head of state of the Republic of Jamaica, separate from the head of government of the Republic of Jamaica, President and Prime Minister. President as head of state, Prime Minister as head of government.
However, there was no ignoring the elephant in the room, concerns from at least two church groups that Canadian Professor Richard Albert should be removed from the committee because he has a pro-LGBT and pro-abortion bias. When I asked Mrs. Malahoo Fort whether Professor Albert or anyone else will be removed from the committee, this is what she said.
The concerns that have been raised are noted. Concerns are noted. I just want to assure Jamaicans that the work is being done in the best interest of the nation.
Mrs. Malahoo Fort continued to stress throughout the press conference that the media should focus on the work of the committee. Then when we asked Professor Albert for a response to the concerns raised by the church groups, this is all he had to say.
I'm a scholar of constitutions, but I should also say that I have a deep family connection to this beautiful land. My great-grandfather was born here. My parents met here at school. My aunts and uncles were educated here at colleges and universities. But more than that, set that aside. I'm a scholar of how constitutions are made, how they're changed, with specific focus on the Caribbean.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
Over in the Bahamas, Minister of State there with responsibility for the National Insurance Board gives an update on the proposed contribution rate increase to stave off the NIB's current monthly $4 million deficit. This ZNS News item has more.
The executive and the National Insurance Board made a recommendation to the government with things that they would like to see for the fund to be sustained. And in those recommendations was an increase. But some of those recommendations would require Cabinet to make a decision. That decision has been made, and so it's just a matter of time before that decision is announced. We want to save the National Insurance Fund for future generations. These are the things that we have to consider, because the reality is, by law, the government cannot bail out the National Insurance Board. The revenues coming into national insurance is going to be either from contributions, rent, or investment.
The minister notes that this is not a new problem, but it is one where a decision must be made soon.
I want the public to understand the dynamics. And this has been going on for 20 years. And I personally would have spoken to former chairmen, former ministers, FNM and PLP, who know that for the past 20 years, all of the actuarial reports have pointed to the same thing. The reality is now time is running out. Those reports that said the fund would deplete in 2029 or 30 is saying that it's going to deplete in 2028. And so that exhaustion period is getting closer. It's being expedited.
Hubbards is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardsHardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.